We have never been just a campaign. We are a grassroots, multiracial, multi-generational movement.
Let me say, especially to the young voters who have been inspired by Senator Sanders, I hear you. I know what's at stake. I know what we have to do.
Bernie Sanders addressing his supporters after suspending his campaign for president, and presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden reaching out to those voters. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Former White House press secretary Ari Fleischer, Fox News correspondent Jillian Turner, and Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. Ari, how does Biden pull this off? Move far enough to the left to win not just the backing, but the strong backing of Sanders supporters, while not moving so far to the left that he turns off the independents and moderates he's going to need in the fall to beat Donald Trump?
Well, Chris, the first thing you have to recognize is the Democratic Party as a whole has moved sharply to the left. There was a Gallup poll that came out a couple months ago that said 24% of the Democrats consider themselves liberal when Bill Clinton was president. Today, 51% consider themselves liberal. So the party's shifted. But what's happened to Joe Biden is he's renounced previous positions he used to hold. On abortion, for example, the overwhelming bipartisan position was opposition to federally funded abortions. He's now opposed to that. He wants federally funded abortions. He's changed his position on from Obamacare, where he was against government-controlled health care, the public option. Now he's for it. He's for a Green New Deal. He's for free college, even if you don't have to pay for it. A host of issues he shifted left because the Democratic Party has shifted left.
So, Juan, you just heard Ari make what will undoubtedly be the Trump White House case, which is it's too late, that Biden is already too far to the left. Do you agree with that? And how do you see him playing this, where, yes, he reaches out to the the Sanders supporters, because there still are some significant differences between Biden and Sanders on Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. How does he win them over, but still not be seen as a socialist, at least in a credible sense, as the president will try to portray him?
Well, I think we're in a politically difficult moment for Joe Biden, in that, usually when a candidate has the nomination in hand, that candidate looking toward the general election moves to the center, not to the left or the right. But in this case, I think you see Biden saying, I've got to move to the left somewhat to build a bridge to the Bernie bros, to the people who were alienated in 2016 by Hillary Clinton, think the establishment Democrats that rigged the whole election against them. And I think what he's doing is, by reaching out on lowering the age of eligibility for Medicare to 60 and making college education more affordable, I don't think that, thanks to Bernie Sanders, those are any longer seen as socialist, radical, left-wing ideas. At a time of rising income inequality in the country, those ideas are pretty mainstream. Right. And politically, I don't think that the president will be able to say this is socialism. Most people will say it's pragmatic.
Then there is Barack Obama's continued silence about his own former vice president, and President Trump had some fun with that this week. Take a look.
It does amaze me that President Obama hasn't supported Sleepy Joe. It just hasn't happened. When's it going to happen? When is it going to happen? Why isn't it? He knows something that you don't know.
Jillian, what do you think is taking Barack Obama so long to come out in endorsing and in strong support for his former vice president?
Well, what we do know is that his team for the last year and a half has said he's planning to stay out of the campaign fray because he feels that's what the appropriate role for a former president is, and he's going to get in once the Democrats have coalesced around a single candidate. So I would anticipate, based on that any day now he's going to throw his full weight behind Biden, and when he does, it's going to be a huge boost for Biden. I think, President Obama's ratings among the Democrats are still astronomically high, somewhere in the 90th percentile. And I think those very same Americans are super eager to hear from President Obama on the coronavirus pandemic, something else he's not really spoken out about a lot. So everyone's going to be tuned in wherever he does this, whether it's online or in front of crowds, touting Vice President Biden. I would say, Chris, quickly, that the big risk for Biden with support from President Obama is that he's likely to outshine him on the trail. He's a great orator, and I think that's something that Biden is probably thinking long and hard about, if he wants to be following him at all after, President Obama introduces him at rally after rally, if we have rallies.
Jillian, I want to stay with you and ask you about this really stunning report in the New York Times this morning. I talked about with Dr. Inglesby that top health officials within the administration were warning the president from mid-January on about the real threat of this pandemic, and that it took weeks, in a sense, really more than a month, for President Trump to respond. How damaging do you think that is to the president?
Well, President Trump and the rest of the White House comms team have been pushing back on that report really hard the last 2 days. Whoever ends up being right or wrong in this scenario, I think the one thing, Chris, that everybody, all Americans, can really agree on is the role that China has played, China's government, as separate and distinct from the Chinese people, China's Communist Party, the government. We now know, thanks to leaked U.S. intelligence reports and other studies, that they spent weeks and months under-reporting the real case numbers in Wuhan during the early days of the outbreak. I spoke to Peter Navarro, the trade advisor, last week. He said he thinks one of the reasons China hedged and delayed reporting for so long was because they were trying to hoard PPE and medical equipment. So I think the real shoe that's still to drop here is the American people really learning in depth about the role that China's government played in covering this up, as opposed to, I think we can give our own government the benefit of the doubt that they didn't willfully ignore warnings that hundreds of thousands of Americans were going to die. If it turns out to be an intelligence oversight or bad guidance given to the president, we'll have to grapple with that and the fallout from that over the coming years for sure.
Juan, we're running out of time, so I need a quick answer from you on this. Your reaction to the New York Times report today about the president getting all these reports, including at least 2 in January from his Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary Azar.
Well, I don't think it's any great revelation that we had a slow response as a country. I'll leave all the finger pointing and backbiting to others, as Jillian was just saying. I mean, we'll have reviews, but the key here is moving forward. And I think moving forward, I think we have to look at how the president is conducting himself. Are we getting the test right now quickly? Are we moving towards understanding how people who've had the virus can act, possibly on an immune basis, to help us? All of that. I don't think these briefings the president's been holding are any help. Even the conservative Wall Street Journal editorial page has said he's turned it into the Trump show. So I think we need trust, credibility, like Dr. Inglesby at the top of this show, Chris. We need those voices, Dr. Fauci, less so than the president attacking the WHO and the reporters.
Yeah, I want to pick up on the briefings with you as a communications professional, Ari, because the president did get high marks for his White House briefings, at least originally. But in more recent days, certainly this week, you saw him getting into fights with governors he did not think were sufficiently appreciative, or reporters. Here's one case where he was asked about a deputy inspector general who had criticized the administration. Take a look.
You asked me when she was appointed. I told you when she was appointed.
You're a third-rate reporter, and what you just said is a disgrace.
Ari, if you were advising the president, what would you tell him about these briefings?
Well, I've been saying this for weeks, Chris. I think the briefings are extremely helpful. It is proper and wise for the President of the United States in a crisis to be regularly accessible. But the briefings should be no longer than 30 minutes worth of Q's and A's. The longer it goes on like that, reporters run out of good questions, and it just becomes the old war of one truculent side against another. I also think the president needs to remind everybody we're one country, and these little battles don't really help. The best thing that helps is unity, and I wish that was the tone the president was setting. It's not his style.
All right, Fleischer, panel, thank you all.